Is it still worth going to Japanese card stores in late 2025? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to another video. Welcome to an update on Japanese Pokemon card stores. State of Japanese Pokemon card stores. I recently went on a trip to Tokyo. I had a couple days there. Used that opportunity to go to some card stores and look at some of the cards, look at some of the prices, maybe buy some cards. And I learned some things. That have changed, and those are the things I want to talk about today. I have a few cards as examples. And I will be showing these cards in more detail as I talk about them in this video. Things have changed. Things have changed quite a bit this year. I started to notice this type of change earlier in the year, but it's very, very noticeable now. And it primarily has to do with the older cards in non-gradable condition. LP to damaged, really. So before I go into too much detail, I want to make a very clear draw a line between the ultra modern stuff and the older stuff. The ultra modern stuff is still kind of the same, hasn't really changed anything there. I mean, cards are expensive now. New chase cards are quite pricey, and that's because Japanese cards are once again in quite high demand. But aside from that, it's still kind of the same. The older stuff is where I noticed the biggest changes. And within the older stuff, there's sort of two separate categories as well, two distinct categories. That's the gradable stuff, and that's the non-gradable stuff. And I noticed the most changes with the non-gradable stuff. Before we go to the cards in detail, just a bit of backstory, a bit of history that I think is important and quite relevant, and you should be aware of. When I got back into the hobby in late 21, it wasn't uncommon for you to find older gradable cards for reasonable prices. To give you an example, I purchased an Expedition Dragonite Holo for 3,000 yen, degraded a PSA 9. Now, one of the reasons why it was so cheap is because, well, that was late 21. It's just quite a while ago now, and things were just cheaper back then. But another reason why that card was that price is because Japanese cards hadn't yet become as mainstream as they are today. Japan still had its borders closed. There was no tourist shopping going on at the time. And grading wasn't really a thing yet in Japan. And graded cards online and in card stores were really quite rare. You hardly ever saw them. And that all changed then later, sometime in 22. And when I purchased the Dragonite, that card store had at least one copy of each e-reader holo there. And they all were roughly the same in terms of condition versus price. It all seemed totally reasonable. Well, that then changed, of course. Cards got more expensive over time. Grading became a thing. The borders opened, a lot of people coming to Japan to buy Pokemon cards, but also people in Japan who live here buying a lot of cards. But one thing was always the same that never really changed until this year. And that's the fact that the non-gradable cards remained at relatively reasonable prices. I'm generalizing here. There's always going to be certain cards that are exceptions that don't fit the norm, obviously. But generally speaking, until this year, heck, even this spring, it was much better than it is now. The non-gradable cards remained quite reasonably priced for what they were. The graded premium started to become a thing, but the non-gradable cards, they might have gone up a little bit over time as cards got more expensive, but they remained pretty well priced in the card stores and online. Well, let me tell you, things are very different now. Non-gradable cards of popular Pokemon, certain types of cards, are now very, 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 very expensive in the Japanese card stores, to the point now where I often ask myself, who is still paying this price? And this is where we get into the examples. I want to start with the Gengar Level X, a very, very cool card. This is a copy I picked up on Medicari Japan. I paid about 9,000 yen for it. Here's the screenshot. It is definitely not gradable. It is in moderately played condition. I would say it's got some whitening. It's got one little dent, but overall on the front, it's a beautiful card. It doesn't have a lot of scratches, considering how much whitening it has. 9,000 yen seemed okay given the late 2025 market. It's important to keep in mind, right? This card in the card stores is a lot more expensive. So we're going to look at some card stores now and see what they're charging for this card. Card Rush has one in condition B and one in condition, or condition C. Well, several copies each, but they have B and C available. A and A minus are sold out. And you can see what they are charging. Condition B, 40,000 yen. Condition C, 22,000 yen. Now, the copy I have, I would put it in condition C. I've gotten Bs from card stores that look similar, but I've also gotten Cs that are a little bit better than this. So to be fair, I'll put it in condition C. I think that's quite fair. With Card Rush, very important to keep in mind with Card Rush, they do not have a condition D for this card. And so I think it's safe to assume that anything that would be condition D in other places, they just throw into the condition C. And D is pretty damn bad, okay? So if we assume that this would be a C, which I think, again, you could pay for a B and get a card like this. I think they're very clear. But let's say it's C. It's still 22,000 yen on Card Rush. That is more than twice as much as Medikari. This is Toreka Camp out of Nagoya. I'm using these stores because they are the ones who have cards like this available. They have up-to-date prices, and they're very popular. A lot of people are buying from these card shop websites. Here we can see, B plus 50,000, B 35, C 20, B minus 25. Condition D is sold out at 15,000 yen. So even if you're like, hey, Ibex, you're crazy, this is definitely condition D, which let me tell you, it's not, guarantee you. But if you're like, this is condition D, it's still like twice as expensive compared to what I paid, almost twice as expensive, the one that sold out. If they relisted a condition D, they're probably going to charge more for it. But, again, if we say it's C, then it's 20,000 yen on Toreka Camp, which is so expensive for a card in this condition from the card stores. Now, this wasn't like a lucky find on Medikari, a once in a year find. These are not that hard to find a Medikari in this condition for roughly this price. You might find one that's a little bit cheaper for this condition. You might find one that's a little bit more expensive for this condition, but this is not that hard to find on Medikari. And so I'm not trying to make a lucky find look like the norm. It's just this massive difference that is now very common between Medikari and the card stores. Now, I want to get very clear, there's always been a price difference between Medikari and the card stores. There's always been a premium in the card stores. I've almost always been able to find cards cheaper on Medikari than in the stores. It's just that with cards now having gotten more expensive in general, this difference feels so much crazier. Right? If we assume it's the same multiplier, if we say, just random, no card now, just random numbers, trying to make an example here. If we say it's a 3x multiplier or something, right, that you might have had even in the past, right? You might have even had a 2x, 3x multiplier in the past. Let's say a card might have been 2,000 yen on Medikari and 6,000 yen in a card store. Even there, you're like, oh, wow, that's a 4,000 yen difference. It's kind of nuts. Back then with those prices, you could kind of justify the store price. You go into the store, hey, I can look at it in person. With Medikari, I don't know if I'm going to get one shipped to me for 2,000 yen that has a hidden dent that wasn't visible in the pictures by accident or on purpose. But you can sort of go like, yeah, I can kind of justify paying the card store premium now because, it's a difference, but it's not that bad, all things considered. It's very convenient for me to buy it in person and I have to wait for it to arrive in the mail. I can also buy multiple cards at the same time. Right, that convenience, that ability to look at the card in person when it's a 3x multiplier, but it's 2,000 to 6,000 yen, it's not that bad. But let's say a card is 6,000 yen on Medikari, and it still has a 3x multiplier in the card stores, you'd have to pay 18,000 yen in the card store. So now we're talking about a 12,000 yen difference. It's the same multiplier, but because everything has just gotten more expensive in general, that multiplier feels really rough, and I wouldn't be willing to pay an extra 12,000 yen just to be able to look at it in person and have the convenience of picking it up there. But that's the reality of things right now. And I'll use these cards now as the next example to kind of prove my point here. I know it's a small sample size, but let me tell you, I can assure you this is true for almost every older card that is even remotely popular. Misty's Tears. A very, very popular card. It's one of the first, I think, sort of Japanese exclusive cards that people learn about who aren't even into Japanese cards. Everybody knows Misty's Tears. It's always been in demand. This is a good example of a card that's had a graded premium for quite a while, even in Japan. But it's an example of a card that for a long time, until this year, you could still find for really, really good prices even in the card stores. That is different now. These two copies I picked up once again on Medicuddy. I paid 10,000 yen for both cards from the same seller. They came as a pair and they are relatively clean. I would put them as LP. Some people might put these as near mint. One's got a bit of something funny going on the edge, but they don't have any whitening. They've got some surface scuffing because they're old cards, right? But they're relatively clean for what they are. 10,000 yen for both copies. Once again, here, important to point out, not a lucky find. You can find cards in this condition of this copy of Medicuddy for this price, 5,000 yen a piece. You can find them. There's several at like 7,000 yen, 7,500 yen when I checked yesterday, which is a little bit more, but not that much more. So this wasn't a super crazy lucky find. In card store condition, I would put these into A-. To be honest though, I've ordered A condition cards that look way worse than this before. So, you shouldn't be surprised if you order this card from a card store in A condition and it comes in and looks worse than these. But I would put them in A-. They're pretty clean, but they're not perfect, right? Now, Card Rush doesn't have these for sale. Card Rush, generally speaking, has very little old back. Torikakamp has these for sale. You can see on Torikakamp, they're selling, this is the gym version, the deck version, which typically is, I think will be a little bit cheaper. But they have an A- for 10,000 yen, which isn't actually all that bad. For a card store, that doesn't sound too crazy. A- 10,000 yen. But it's still double than the Medicuddy price. And again, keep in mind, this could have been an A condition card from Torikakamp, right? Considering what I've gotten from them in the past. And if this would have been considered A condition, you can see they sold for 25,000 yen. 5x multiplier. 2x to 5x. Kind of crazy. Let me just check the non-deck version real quick, because that's going to be slightly different. So here's the non-deck, and you can see for the actual set card, so it's the one with the rarity symbol, is from the set, not from the deck. A- sold at 13,000. Condition B, they currently have one in stock for 5.6k. Condition B is definitely not as good as these that I bought. I actually have some footage though. This is interesting too. I have some footage from my card shopping Tokyo last time around. So let's look at a couple of clips. So this first clip, very short clip, but this is from PDG. And you can see they have two right here. One at 10,000, one at 20,000. And I mean, we were not seeing the backs here, unfortunately, obviously, but look at the top right corners. I mean, significant whitening. You can even see on the 20,000 yen copy, you can see this edge. There's whitening on this edge. There's some whitening at the top here. Let's see if we get a slightly different angle here. The 10,000 yen one, whitening across the top, rough looking top right corner. And, just looking at this corner right here for the 10,000 yen copy, you already know the back is going to look real rough. There's no card has this corner and a clean back. It's just not how it is. 10,000 yen and 20,000 yen. Two copies in what I would say A- condition for 10,000 yen on Medicuddy. And, not super, super easy to find, but you can find them. This is the type of stuff I'm talking about. When you see what card stores are charging for these cards in these conditions, it's wild. When I look at this stuff, I don't know who's paying this. I forget which card store this is, but you see one here, 3,000 yen. So this is actually one I inspected. I looked at this because I was like, hey, if this is clean, 3,000 yen is a great price. It was beat up. It was completely beat up. I mean, rough looking card, heavily played for sure. You could argue, hey, it's such a cool card, such a popular card, heavily played, 3,000 yen is still a good deal. Maybe, right? Maybe. But compared to what you can find online, it's not even close. This was the case for almost every older card that I looked at that I was like even remotely popular. It's pretty wild. So then let's talk about the gradable cards. This is nothing new. Gradable premium has been a thing for a while. You'll often have to pay a premium for a gradable copy. Oftentimes they're priced very close to the PSA 10. Oftentimes PSA 9s will be cheaper. It's nothing new, but I just have a very recent example. Right? And this is the Mewtwo GX from GX Ultra Shiny. You can see the price sticker still on it. I paid 20,000 yen for this card. Okay, it's not a perfect card. I think it's decently well centered for a GX. It's got a couple of tiny white nicks in the back. I think it can still get a 10, but I'd call it a 50-50. So on this trip, I was in Tokyo, but on my way back from Tokyo, I stopped in Nagoya for a couple of hours to go to some stores there. And this is one card I actively looked for on this trip. And I inspected at least 10 of these across all the different stores, and I picked up one. This is the only one that was decently well centered and in like good condition, even with the tiny little white nicks on the back. Every other copy that I looked at in the store's top conditions, they were all, by the way, 20,000 yen, 19,800. Every single store I went into that had this card, doesn't matter Tokyo, doesn't matter Nagoya, it was always 19,800. And every other copy was either Super OC, GX centering is rough, right? Sometimes was either Super OC and or had damage on the back. More whitening than this copy, scratches, you name it. And here's the killer, okay? PSA 9s are selling for 10, 12,000 yen. There's one listed for 11,300 yen right now on Medicati. This is almost double the price of the PSA 9 for a card that might get the 10. Now, hey, maybe that's just how it is, right? You're going to have to take the gamble at the 10. If you get the 10, yeah, it's probably worth, 30 to 40,000 last time I checked. So yeah, if you get the 10, yeah, there you go, 37, right? Most recent sale, 40, 37, 35, If you get the 10, then hey, congratulations. You just found a card in a Japanese card store, and the 10 has a decent premium on over the raw card. But I couldn't find anything gradable except for this one, and this one would even be a gamble. Now, this is one I will put in the binder. I just wanted the clean, well-centered one for the binder. But this isn't anything new, but the reason why I'm showing this card is to highlight the level of risk it now takes. Right? When I bought that Expedition Dragonite a few years ago, it was just 3,000 yen for an Expedition Dragonite holo. Just no matter what happens to that card, 8, 9, 10, whatever, who cares? That's a cool price for a really cool card from that long ago. Now, these days, with grading having become such a big deal, if you want to buy gradable cards in Japan, you're going to have to take this level of risk. This level of risk is what it takes now. Paying double for the raw card. Double PSA 9 price for the raw card. This is me generalizing. Every card is unique in that way as well, but roughly speaking, this is what you're looking at. And it wasn't easy to, again, I inspected a lot of these. I only found one worth picking up. Now, you might have watched videos recently over the last year or two, people card shopping in Japan, and they always seem to find cool stuff that grades well. One thing I wanted to say about that is that I've noticed myself watching these videos, because I like watching them, they're cool. One thing I've noticed that the types of cards that people are buying have changed significantly. Where, maybe a few years ago, you saw people buy stuff like Giratina level X's, Darkrai level X's. Now people are buying Gallade level X's and cards like that, right? Still cool, but clearly not on the same tier. And also the people who make it look so easy and successful, were successful at it, they're often buying significant volume. If you're buying hundreds of cards, thousands of cards, yeah, overall it's probably going to work out. But if you come to Japan and you want to buy a few cards to get graded, 10, 20 cards or something for your collection, and you try to target cards like this in this price range or whatever, yeah, it's going to be rough, man. You're going to have to take on that risk. And that's just how it is these days. But the grading stuff here, the premium on the clean cards over the PSA 9 compared to the PSA 9, I think it's gotten a bit more extreme. Right? Whereas in the past, you would find cards like this, for the PSA 9 price, where it's now, it's double the PSA 9 price almost. So it's more extreme, but it's always been risky buying stuff like that to grade, right? If you don't get the 10. But the one thing that really stood out to me this time around is just the older cards in plate conditions. Some of these are now so expensive, even in beat up condition. Other cards I looked at, Blastoise EXs, Rayquaza EX. I'm talking about the OG EXs. Various Rayquazas and cards like that used to be, 2,000, 3,000 yen in LP, MP condition. They're now 15, 20,000 yen in those same conditions. And it's crazy. It's just crazy. you can still find steals. You can still find good deals. You can still get lucky and find something that's underpriced, hasn't been updated, or find that gradable gem, right? But overall, it is rough, and the stores are asking a lot of money for a lot of these cards. Online, you can still find them for pretty reasonable prices here and there. That's basically it. I'll be going to Switzerland for the holidays. I'll be stopping in Tokyo on my way there and on my way back, and so I'll check out the stores again, and I'll give you an update early next year to see what I've seen. It's not going to be too different, I don't think, because it's not much time has passed, but I'll be looking again. Anyways, let me know. Have you been card shopping in Japan recently? What's your experience been like, especially with these older cards in these, I don't know, MPLP near mint conditions, damage condition even. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thank you very much for that, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.